sound of yesterday. Barstools and Bandtalk, and memories live on. Barstools and Bandtalk with Dave and Sean.
Well,
I'm Sean.
Day. There's Sean. I'm Dave. We are Barstool and
Bandtalk.
should I show up my free shit today? Oh
Well,
my
just
god.
before you do, we got to, oh, sure. While you're doing it, we want to give it a big shout out to our buddy Philip Wells. Look what this man brought to the table. And I guess we're getting into e-commerce and online trading and all that other stuff. So get ready. And our guest here, we're really excited about this man. I'll tell you, people now will recognize him if you go to the Halifax Mooseheads games. But people from yesteryear will recognize him as one hell of a friggin' singer, one hell of a talent. And Dave, who do we got on tonight, my man?
He's a bundle of energies. He's the man that probably doesn't need a whole lot of introductions. As Sean said, if you've ever been to a Mooseheads game, you've seen Peter Baylis. Formerly of Steps Around the House, the Hopping Penguins. He's done a multitude of things, and he's here with us tonight, Mr. Peter Baylis. Yay!
What's up?
How you doing, brother?
It's a terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching some good friends. How's it going?
Robert, you see Robert just get up in the morning singing like that. It just blows my mind.
I do. I drive around in my truck all day singing at the top of my lungs. People look at me like I'm crazy, but I don't care.
Here you go. Peter, what part of Cape Breton are you from, brother?
I'm not from Cape Breton, although I do sound like it sometimes. I'm an honorary Cape Breton. Some people have given me the honorary Newfoundlander handle too, which is quite nice. But I think it's just built in. The accent comes from being around here, right? And being around so many musicians.
That's
we
right.
got the car to the bar with Arlene, Marlene, Darlene, Charlene, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Where'd you grow up, brother?
No, I'm from Halifax, born and raised in Halifax, in the South End mainly. I spent most of my life there. You know, used to have a garage in the hoity-toity South End, which the garage door would be open and we'd be making all kinds of rock and roll quirky sounds back in the day, watching all these rich folk drive by going, what are those crazy people doing in that house down in this part of town? You know, it was funny. No, but I do sound like I've been accused of having that accent once in a while.
Yeah, we all get it. People say, what part of Newfoundland are you from? Nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, you from Newfoundland? Do you know? I know somebody from Newfoundland.
Yeah. Let's start at the beginning, Peter.
So what else has happened?
Well, we've been just, trying to keep our own sanity. Sean and I decided to do this website, I guess maybe 2 weeks tomorrow? Maybe 13, I think we're day 13, and there's 1,230 members or something. It's been amazing. We've had a great run, great success. We're having a lot of fun. And we're just trying to keep our own sanity through all this pandemic bullshit. And people are loving talking to the folks who made it happen all the years ago and who are still making it happen. You know what I mean? So we're kind of doing like an old versus new. And the premise behind it would be if you and I and Sean were sitting in a bar, we'd just be talking about stuff.
Right,
What we talk about is what we're going to talk about here tonight.
Absolutely. You know, it's there certainly are a lot of us that invested a lot of time into playing, and it's quite a history and quite it's almost like an exclusive club almost, but it's not, because we're all like open armed guys and girls that just welcome everybody into the kitchen, literally, and to play some music, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it all, so many stories and so many people around that have done so many different things, I think back to the time when I started. Don't know about you guys, but I was always interested in wanting to be in a band of some sort and sing and all that, but I'd go around and sneak into bars and see bands like Oakley and Terry Hattie and I don't know, I can't even think of them back then. Minglewood, whenever you creep around, you'd see the Moon when it was on Gottingen Street, right? You try to catch, Tower of Power played there, right? In Chicago played in places like that, and what's his name? Muddy Waters played there. Like, you think of that kind of stuff in the city. So we obviously had a lot of influence around us as musicians in the Maritimes. And I think musicians globally probably caught on to the fact that there was probably a community here, and that's probably why a lot of them showed up. I'd like to think that, and I think there's a bit of history that way too. So, so then, but my focus back then too was I played a top 40 band with my very first band. And check out these musicians. Jamie Miles played drums. John Chason was on bass. It's my first band. Now I'm 19 years old, right? And Shan Arsenal was a guitar player later. Dave Rockwell, who's been around, was a guitar player. Brian Cable, a keyboard player. And I can't remember. We didn't have any horns or anything, but members changed in and out. But that, to step on a stage with John Chason, the likes of John Chason, and just learn from that, have that around you, it's like, oh yeah. And just to absorb that kind of stuff and learn from it, was quite.
And Shan Erson knows no slouch either.
Oh my gosh, Shan is amazing. And, and those guys have all gone on to do huge things and, met all kinds of people and played with all kinds of people. I went to Toronto and had started off there from nothing, basically joined the Penguins out there, the Hopping Penguins, but I knew them from back here. This is after steps around the house. But, my journey took me on to meet many very cool people who, luckily like how I sang and stuff. So I got to play. I had a regular Sunday afternoon jam for about 6 months. It was just a jam, and it was Steve Webster was a bass player. Steve played with Billy Idol and Atlanta Miles. Glenn Milcham was a drummer. He played with various bands in Toronto, and Garbage Man wanted to be one, but he's currently the drummer of, I think you've heard of the Rodeo, and a guy named Asher Horowitz was on guitar, and I would sing, and we just jam, but you know what I mean? Like being from down here and then going up there and then like meeting those kinds of people and then being able to jam with them and hang out with them, and it just, even then, you sort of touched on it earlier, it's like we do have something down here that is quite expressive, and it sort of can tie in to, to lots of people and to lots of levels, but even on higher levels of some of the musicianship in this country, and hence globally in some cases too, right? But I digress.
Well, and I mean, I'm not sure where you lived in Toronto, but I lived up there for 7 years. And I mean, I remember, block and a half, we used to go to this bar called the Artful Dodger, which is a block and a half north from the Gasworks. And a little fellow by the name of Phil X used to play with this band. And Phil X is playing with Bon Jovi now.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could go into any bar in any hole in the wall and see incredible musicians, but people don't realize, and Dave and I are really starting to get schooled, that's the way it was here.
Yeah, man. There was so much of it, for example, I made going to see a guy like Wayne Nicholson at Oakley way back in the day, right? And now somebody I can call a friend,
right?
Who got up on stage with, play with. One of the things that I do is I have a band. It's called Peter Baylis, a Friday night band. It's at the Arndale Yacht Club, Final Fridays. For a year and a half, it was going until all this fucking madness started. So I put it on hold. But one of the special guests was that I always have a special guest artist on that joins the band. Like that's how we get away with the jam part of it, right? Bringing a special guest. But lots of other people show up, and even the people that show up are incredible to get on stage. But I'll tell you about those in a second. But Wayne was going to be our special guest in July. I mean, that still can happen. But you think of going to see, but guys like that, Bruce Dixon playing bass, which I've got a chance to play. Like that guy's a monster. He's world-class bass player, and seeing Doug McKay on drums and Bill McCauley, God rest his soul, playing keyboards and all that stuff. But now to a point where now he's going to come and be a special guest in a band that I have put together to play. Right. You know what I mean? It's mind-boggling. A few of those things have happened. Going to Toronto, checking things out back in the '80s with Steps Around the House, being influenced by certain bands like Pucka Orchestra and Lorraine Segato, who had Rise Up. What was that band called? you know,
Oh,
anyway, was a culture, was it
Parachute Club.
Parachute Club. That's right. Thank you. Sorry, lost my 57-year-old brain lost its synapse for a sec.
One of those clubs.
Anyway, so she get to see her play, stand there on the stage, looking at the Misty Moon on when it was on Barrington Street, freaking out, going, hey, you know, we were gigging at the time, who steps around us, and just in awe of these musicians. You know, I go up to Toronto and meet them and end up playing and jamming with them. It's like just really weird stuff. But then, you know, I used to sing along with the Rise Up and all that. Lorraine was down here doing Black Harbor, you know, the TV show they shot in Hubbard's. And she was had a partner involved with that or something. But then they did the rap party for it. And she would come to this restaurant that I was working at a little bit, and we all knew each other anyway. And she said, Peter, look, we're putting this thing together to do the rap party for Black Harbor. And we'd love you to play percussion and sing backup. So there I am from the years of leaning on the stage at the Misty Moon. Now I'm actually on stage with a version of the Parachute Club, playing the conga solo and singing backup to rise up, rise into the, and looking over at Lorraine Segato going, am I alive? Is this actually happening to me right now? You know? And there's so many little stories like that, but a lot, and I'm just on the smaller scale of that kind of stuff. You think of all the musicians that you guys are talking to and talking about where their careers, their arc of their career and all that, you know, like I've done a show with Alfie Zappacosta at Neptune Theater as Judas, right. He was Jesus. Heather Rankin was Mary. You know, I used to go see Alfie, you know, freaking out at how good the guitar player he was, not you know, let alone a singer. Mm. Then I find myself doing session work as a singer in Toronto. And who's the guitar player? Alfie, you know, and he was also a jingle singer. And then, you know, and then I'm on stage with them playing, you know, in Jesus Christ Superstar at Neptune Theater. Like, it just, you know what I mean? It's like, it just, you kind of go, you look back at it, you go, this really happened? Like, you can't write this stuff, you know, this stuff that actually happened, you know?
But that's a good testament to you, because I've always been told if you do things the right way and you're not an asshole and you have a little bit of talent, people might come knocking on the door to be part of what they're doing.
Well, I can't justify the not an asshole part. I'll leave that up to everybody. I'm sure there's a few people that might have something to say about that.
Take us back for a second, Peter. Take us back to, and I'm saying 1984 for the Q4 Homegrown album, but probably before that. Was Steps Around the House your first big band?
No. So, yeah, at first, just with any kind of notoriety like that, right? So, this is a good story. I hope this stuff isn't boring you, because my kids not quite a long ways. But so I'm playing with that band that I mentioned with John, Main Street it was called.
Okay.
And there was, I think it was Sharon B and the Brutal Beat back then, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We found ourselves, both of our bands, in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, on these little mini tours, you know, that we all used to do to try to make a couple bucks.
The old around. Port Club, yep.
Yeah. So we were, yeah, exactly. So we were, you know, playing this club, and then we went to the after, you know, they played somewhere else, and we hooked up and we're at a party, drinking and partying until the sun came up, knowing that we had to go do a matinee or something, not knowing how we're actually going to pull it all together. But, you know, you're in your 20s. So there's guitar player James Logan and the bass player, Jim Parker, and myself. We were just sitting there off to the side. And at that point, we were kind of, maybe we're in our 20s. We had a little bit of an attitude about playing all the cover stuff, you know, and how blues dominated, which Nova Scotia was at the time. But now it turns out that how amazing that was to have gone through, and still, because it's making a resurgence, right? You know, right. You see Miles Goodwin playing blues again with Ross Billard, who plays keyboards with the Hopping Penguins, you know. So but anyway, we're getting sort of a little tired of that whole scene and singing, you know, top 40 tunes. So we just threw this idea together. Well, we should get together and then write some songs. Like, you know, we're in our 20s, I'm sure. So the inception of that band was actually in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, way back then.
Wow.
So then find ourselves, you know, they said we had this great drummer, and he was 16, 17-year-old kid, and we went down into his basement. We were used to rehearse in his house. His name is Sean Bryson. He went on to play with some pretty big bands from in Canada, like they'll come to me in a second. But he was 17, and you know, we went in the basement and heard this guy play drums. He sounded exactly like Stuart Copeland. It's like, oh my God, who's this guy? So, and then the keyboard player was a guy that played with a couple of bands with John back then, Dr. Bruce Murphy. So that thing sort of came together, and I was just playing a little guitar, trying to learn how to write songs, right? So then the Q&A4 blew up with this whole sort of promoting local talent and songwriting and talking about this record. So now you have an impetus. It's now you have like a deadline. All right, well, let's get this. We got something to work toward. So in a house that I lived on Brenton Street that's no longer there, of course, with all the development in Halifax, with the 2.5-inch tape machine put down in the basement with Kevin. Oh my God, these names I haven't seen for so long. It was sound tech guy.
Barris.
No, it's not that guy. I think he's passed away. He was a sound tech, and he went into being. He was a real good studio guy. Oh, God, it's been so long since I mentioned these guys' names. Sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
don't feel like I'm doing an honor if I can't remember his name. It'll probably come to me in a second. But so, you know, we're all set up in separate rooms in this house that we're living in with the master room. You know, all lived in the basement. So we end up with the tape and we send it in, you know, about 2 days before the deadline to Q&A4. And, you know, lo and behold, we get the phone call that they're considering us. And, you know, I forget how they did it, but I think they played it and people voted. I think that's what they did, calling both things. And the next thing you know, we're like of 7 finalists. And then they did that big show, like you just mentioned earlier, at the Forum, you know, and those were exciting days, right? That was like the next wave, because the 70s had some really interesting bands, like I mentioned earlier. So then that comes the early 80s. So it was that new thing was starting to happen with a bunch of new stuff. So that was a really, really super thing to be. So that was actually the very first band of any notoriety that I answered. That's a long answer to your question, but it went well and went quick. You know, then all of a sudden we were getting all kinds of interest from record labels. You remember those days? Record labels? Yeah, so different now, right? So, you know, we were playing all the gigs and touring. We did a live to air show from the Palace, you know, the Brunswick Street Palace, on C100, all original music. Can you imagine? Like, that was back then, you know. It was Friday night, live to air. We still have those recordings. So those kinds of things. We were getting covered by Rock Express magazine. Remember the magazine that was distributed across the country?
Well, Marnie Farrant has been on the show a few times now. Marnie's done some. You remember Marnie? She was Marnie.
I think I read an article that something he was alluding to there in one of your shows. If I remember correctly. Anyway, or her, sorry. She so we found ourselves in hotel rooms meeting with some record company executives, right? Like Capitol back then, A&M, whatever they were, Warner Brothers, but they all amalgamated and all that. But, you know, we were pretty much like, this is going to happen. You know, we had representation out of Toronto. You know, we got in the rooms and we were young. And they would say that, you know, you got a nice sound, but, you know, you got to fit yourself to pop music. And when you hear those kinds of things, that you get terrified of the fact that they want to change you. Mm-hmm. And then the artistic aspect of your, you know, the integrity steps in, right? Now, I think about it now in hindsight, it's just like, if we just listened and did a little bit of what they asked, then we could have maybe explored more down the road. You know, I still have a letter from Dean Cameron, from the head of Capitol Records from back then, who heard our little demo tapes. That band is fantastic, and that singer, great guy. You know, great sounding guy. And then about 6 months later, we're up in Toronto. We're trying to do that, like get out of Halifax, get out of the Maritimes, do a little mini tour up there, where you're playing to 2 people in Nags Head North. You know, that kind of thing. You know,
boy, brother.
I know, after filling the Palace and all those places, but you know, you got to get away at some point, right? So I look up at the video screen, you know, back when Much Music started, and I saw this band, you know, 5-piece band, you know, songs. I said, turn that up. I want to hear that. And it was, don't forget me when I'm gone. Like, it was Glass Tiger. And I remember looking at everybody going, and it said at the end of the video, it showed that they were on Capitol Records. And I said, well, that's it. I said, we're done. They already got that band. You know, they've already signed that band, so I don't know I don't think they're going to sign two bands that are kind of pretty much similar, right? You know, they might, but anyway. So all that blew up, and then we came back to Halifax. So that's a span of about 5 years. And it just seems like we were playing so much and just doing the same circuit all the time. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. And it gets to be as exciting as it may sound for those people who might be watching this and it is very exciting, but in the repetition, it can get kind of grindy unless you see some growth. We saw some rapid growth, and then we saw it flatten out. And then we saw it because we had not, when we sort of discouraged the record labels, there was no more interest in us, you know? So we basically had to eat it, you know, went, oh no. And I think at that point, you know, there were some inner relationships with some band members that just, it wasn't going to work out. So, you know, but it was a nice journey. It was nice to still be recognized. I mean, people still recognize the name and all that kind of stuff, which is really nice. So we made a little impact. You know, we made a difference for a while in the city. You know, we influenced some people. Because there's a whole bunch of bands around the time, Screaming Trees, Counting Zero, you know, what were they called? You know, so many ICUs, so many bands that were touring the same circuit at the same time. And even we even got this, like, the Tragically Hip came to town, right? You remember that? They played Mexicali Roses.
Yeah.
We were on the same touring circuit way back then with those guys. So we would come across each other, you know. The Northern Pikes, 5440, you know, all those bands. You know, they went on, and we just kind of went, uh-oh.
I mean, you had good songs, Peter. Like, the songs were good. I mean, I remember the original stuff you guys were writing. It seemed to be the right time. And as you get closer towards the end of the 80s, you could see it starting to drop. I mean, record companies were pursuing bands like they used to. You know, you kind of had to go up to them and market them and have it all done in a basket, and maybe they distribute it for you. But it's too bad.
It was trippy because I think there was a saturation point too, right? I think I always make this joke back in the days, I'm going to make a reference here that dates me or dates all of us, back in the days of Eaton's or Simpson's catalogs, right? You'd open up and there'd be a little section in the oh, look, there's a bunch of kids with a fake set of drums and a fake microphone and a fake guitar. I'm like, that's encouraging, but it's also, you know, I hate to be this blunt, but now everybody and their dog is going to think they can do it.
Right.
So it's a saturation. No offense to those that are trying to do some beautiful, beautiful things. Like, I'm not trying to knock it. I think any art creation is absolutely wonderful, right? You know, I'm not trying to discourage that, but the saturation level then it all started to change with technology and all that stuff, right? You know, and now what is it? You promote yourself, don't you? Is that what you do? You make your record, you put it out there, you hope people listen to it. Try to get it on Apple iTunes and all that stuff.
Apple iTunes or Spotify. That's how it works. You put it out there and see what happens. It's kind of how it works.
And the one good thing about people, you know, if there is anything good, it's forced people, musicians and bands, to go out and play live more, right? Because they're back to making money the old way, as opposed to, because certainly they can't make the money off of selling records anymore.
That's really it. You nailed it. You got to play live, and if you sell merch, you sell merch and get a cut of the door, and, you know, and put your original on Spotify and make your 0.27 cents per spin, right?
Bro, all that work, you know. But, you know, it's true. And then that gets down to the passion of it all, right? Really, if that's what you're true to form, then that shouldn't really matter. You're putting your art out there, and people that want to hear it. I just thinking of that. I've been listening to, you know, on Spotify, oddly enough. It's just listening again and really delving into Rose Cousins. That's a talented human being, man. She can write some songs and sing. It's quite amazing. And then she's from here. It's like, holy crap.
I got one to throw out to you here because there's a little bit of a theme that we've talked. We talked to Jack, we talked to Dave, we talked to some other guys. You know, you're doing your original thing, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can continue to do that, or I can do the cover thing to make money. And so for everybody we talk to, kind of, you know, if the cover thing's to the left, the original thing's to the right, eventually you veer to the left, and you kind of just stay there, kind of to the end of the dream. Did you kind of sort of,
you know, we evolved into quasi, because I can sing back when I had hair, looked a little bit like Bono, so we kind of evolved into like almost like a U2 tribute kind of thing, right? Because we were playing a lot of that stuff, and I love singing it. And then that got kind of weird because then people would be booking you based on, play some of that stuff. And then, you know what I mean? So you find yourself pigeonholed into that, which is okay. I mean, I still love singing it to this day. Speaking of Dave Roberts, look at the journey, the arc of those guys, right? And Bruce Nelson, the Titan into the trees, Screaming Trees. What were they called before the Screaming Trees? There was something else they were called, right? Anyway, but
Titan, Screaming Trees, Fire Rooster, Blueberry Grunt.
Blueberry Grunt.
Yeah.
And that's when I was in Toronto, and then I came back and I went to I think Cheers one night, and I saw this crazy wildness on stage, and it was Dave. Dave's a great guy. We get along fabulous. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I love him to death. It's like, oh my God, those guys are insane, and they were just playing. Back to your point, making the dollar, right? Playing that music, playing it the way they wanted to, mind you.
Yes.
But playing and doing the other thing is you can be a cover band, but it's difficult to be a really good cover band, if you know what I mean. Like you can pick the tunes that are great, but you also can put your own energy into it. I'm not saying change it and like that whole influence of like, oh, I'm going to make it ours. Well, you're not making it ours. It's just the fact that you're doing it and doing it your way that makes it yours, but it's still that too, which will segue me into the Hopping Penguins, right? Because I then, from being in Toronto, joined the Penguins, even though they started here. We had the same arc sort of, but they moved to Toronto around the same time, and they got all kinds of recognition from touring coast to coast way back in the day. They got a big break playing on the street in Banff, Alberta, and they went into a club, and then everything broke because the ska movement and the reggae movement was pretty big back then. So in the 90s, I moved to Toronto, after leaving the steps from the house, like 88, 89, I moved to Toronto, moved right in with those guys because they were friends. And then, the next thing you know, we're like Bruce Vickery, who's got Rasta Gumbo now, and other bands, great singer, great guy. He left that band. I sort of took his place. It was like in a 2-day thing. Come on out, join us. We're going on tour. I'm like, okay. I don't really know the tunes, but I'll go out and do it. And then, rest is history. But that ties into your point. So we had a whole bunch of original stuff here and there, and I had couple of videos. There was some airplay, some recognition, but we evolved more to just like the hard driving ska, make people drink beer band, right? Nothing wrong with it because, we made a fairly good, decent living off it because a lot of people still wanted to hear it,
right?
Still wanted to, like, we still play the Shore Club and it goes insane. And hopefully, God, hope it comes back this summer. We do the Shore Club in Chester Race Week. We do Chester Race Week 32 years in a row. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it still goes off the chart, right? The people still go nuts for it. And so same with the Shore Club. And then we get to do the odd little gig here at like a little show up in Halifax. And our drummer, who's the leader of the band, and Andrew, the sax player, that was their band, he says, as long as people want to keep booking it, we're going to keep doing it, so.
Like your style, brother, because, really, that's you eventually get to that point if you're so lucky that you get to take one or two turns around, then somebody actually still wants to book you. You put your hand up and do it, right?
Man, I got to tell you, using John's the bass player in the Friday night band, and I got to be clear about that. I was going in there. They were doing Saturday afternoon matinee things, and I would get up and sing a couple songs, and I brought some energy. Then they asked if I would do this jam thing on Friday nights, Final Friday, and I said, yeah, I will, but I want to do it the way I want to do it. I'm just not going to make it a jam because it can get kind of hectic, as you guys know. And for those people who listen to this who don't know, it's really trying to herd cats, if it's too much of a jam, right? Anyway, so I put the band, we have a special guest. But John, when we play in there, because luckily, back to your point, I've been blessed with the Penguins and with this kind of thing. I've always seemed to be in a situation where there's always lots of people. Like we're in a club, lots of people. There's been lots of times where through the years, but as of late, the Friday nights, it's always packed. The Penguins, we get to do the gigs, they're always packed just because it's a nostalgia thing, and it really helps the show. It enhances everybody to bring it up a notch and keep it up a notch, right? And keep it going, keep the energy flowing. So Yeah. So it's like, that you're absolutely right. I'm going to keep doing it until people want to keep listening,
Maybe if they don't do it anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I find myself through this. I know there's a lot of people putting songs out and, the kitchen party thing. And this, I can't believe some of the stuff get a little controversial here for a second. Some people are against it. And I read a post the other day by a well-known musician from around here saying, begging people to stop putting up songs, which I thought was kind of strange. I won't say his name because it's probably not fair. You can see it if you look for it.
We all know.
Yeah. It's weird because he's such a nice guy, right? And a phenomenal musician. So so every weekend since this thing started, if something inspires me that of the thought of what the week has been like or whatever, just something, and there's a song that pops in my head that applies, right? I've never played it. I'll try to learn it. Very hack on my guitar, but at least like my singing can carry it. So, and I just do that once a week, just to participate in this thing that we're all going through. So that's to your point. If I'm going to keep doing it because I like it, and then, a bunch of people will listen, and that's a bonus. But, it's a chance to express yourself. And there's a lot of songs during this time. There's a lot of songs that really, really, really work to get it. Even if you haven't written one, there's a lot that you can pull out of the hat to listen to and play that really fit the scenario.
Well, it's a good point, because I think the point of, we had Heather on the show earlier this week, and
she's marvelous, isn't she?
She's fantastic, and I mean, she qualified what I already thought. It was a place for people just that were, the way they were feeling. If they want to sing a happy song, sing a sad song, it was just a way for them to cope with what's going on.
That's right.
And it's a runaway hit, right?
Yeah. She. There's another thing, I was standing back watching those guys for a long time, and marveling. I know Jimmy now well, and doing the show with Heather. I saw Heather at a club once. These are the kinds of things I'm just sharing them with you because they're just when they happen to you, don't believe them. She introduced me to a few of her friends, and she goes, "This is Peter, and you should hear this guy sing." And I'm like. So I just got introduced by Heather Rankin and you should hear this guy sing. It's like, I'll take that,
Well,
she's such
another
a cool
thing, and a lot of people are going, why do I know this guy? The voice sounds familiar, and these are people that wouldn't know Steps Around the House. And if you take in Halifax Mooseheads games,
yep. Oh, Canada.
And you did were you not doing it when the Memorial Cup was taking place and all that
Yeah,
run?
I was on national TV every night.
That was a big gig, brother. 10,000 people right there at the Metro Center.
Man, it was phenomenal, and they're so nice. They're so genuine, and meeting. I'm a hockey person, right? So the whole thing started with me. My dad would take my brother and I via train, CN back then, to Montreal during March break to watch Habs games because I'm a massive Habs fan. And back in the day, I was in the 70s, I'd see this guy, the silver-haired big guy, come out singing the operatic style.
Yeah.
Roger Doucette, the late great one. I want to do that someday. Fast forward, I get a chance to, a couple of martinis into the cocktail party with some of the Metro Center brass. And I'm like, and I had a box at the time because I owned the Elephant and Castle, and the box at the Metro Center was sort of associated with it. And I was going to all the hockey games, and it was one thing that was driving me nuts. It was always a different singer. But when you go to the big show, there's usually the same person that sings the anthem, right? So I said, you should get the same person to sing the song. I'm not saying it's me. So, and they said, and with their martini in their hand, we'll sing it now. So I sang both anthems, and they stood back, and they said, "Whoa!" I got a call 2 days after that. This is 9 years ago, going to my 10th year. So 10 years ago almost, go down to the ice, I get a call. We want you to come sing. I go on the ice surface. I put on a tuxedo jacket and bow tie and a handheld microphone they gave me. 12 people in the big empty, what is now the Scotiabank Center, then the Metro Center. So I sing both anthems, and they go, guy comes down the stairs and this, welcome to the next season of the Halifax Mooseheads.
Right on.
From that, I got to, the next year was the Memorial Cup win and all that stuff, right? The President's Cup. So it was all that stuff. And my very first anthems that I sang at the then Metro Center was for an exhibition game for Montreal and Boston.
Nice.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And I met Bob Gainey beforehand, who I watched play with the Nova Scotia Voyageurs, right? So, you know, these little things, right? These little kind of strange little happenstances in life. But anyway, so going into my 10th season, I hope it comes back. I hope it all comes back because God knows what's going to happen, right? My God.
Well,
We're down to our last minute, guys. We're down to our last minute. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you, Peter, for coming up on the show. On the
Oh my God!
Barstools.
Thank you for asking. It means a lot. Thank you so much. You know.
I have one question though before we go.
Okay.
When you do that at the Metro Center, because your pitch, I never heard you go off key. Do you have any sort of monitors, or is that are you just hearing the sound of the building when you're singing that?
No, it's just in the building. It's you know, I've got one of those things over the years. It's called relative pitch. You guys know what that is, right?
Yeah.
So if you hear it, I don't have perfect pitch in that I can't pick things out. But if I hear something sing it once, I'm always going to sing it in the same key. It's just one of those things.
I hear you. My relatives are all stepbrothers and stepsisters when I sing, so I don't have the relative that you have. But no, I just always wanted to ask you that because anytime I heard you
can hear. If I really pay attention, that like it's going through the house system, right, which is above my head.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's not like it's a monitor that I don't. To be honest with you, really quickly, I'll just lay this down that last minute. As a singer in a band over years, God rest his soul, Scrapper. There used to be a sound guy for everybody back in the day. We used to mix the front of house so loud that.